My name is Albert Bozesan, and like Angie said, I create entertainment at STORYBOOK Studios. And I'm very proud to say that we are the first film production company in Europe that's dedicated to using AI in as many production steps as possible to finally elevate this country, hopefully this continent, onto the same level as the amazing Hollywood productions that we all know. Now, I know that the term AI, especially in terms of art and filmmaking, might conjure up a very specific style that can be very strange. So if you've been following AI a little bit, maybe 2 years ago you saw the first steps toward creating something resembling a film with AI. And if you didn't continue following, this might be what that term evokes.
Everything changes, you reach you got to hold on to what you need. And if I hide myself away, how could I go
The reason I'm showing you this, if you haven't come to that conclusion yourself, is AI used to be mostly for comedic or horror purposes. So faces change, expressions are almost human but not quite. They're very deep in what creatives call the so-called uncanny valley, where something seems like it is close to a human but very much isn't and could probably kill us if we get too close. So this is fun for memes. It's not yet useful for filmmaking at all. But the reason I'm showing you this is because many people stopped looking at AI, especially filmmakers stopped looking at AI when they saw this. And I think that was a horrible mistake because this quality was only the beginning. So some of you may have already heard of Midjourney. Can you raise your hand if you've heard of Midjourney, used Midjourney? Okay, that's pretty much every one of you. For those who might not, it's the most popular online image generator. You can enter a text prompt and get images. They started very humbly, though. This is what their product created in 2022. This was before, thankfully, they were asking for money to use their product. I think we all understand why. This is supposed to be a horse in a pool. But the quality improved very rapidly, much more rapidly than any previous technological disruption I think we've experienced, especially in the creative sector. So just in December 23, suddenly they were useful to us. So you can recognize the horse, it has roughly the correct proportions, the water looks very realistic. And this is when it started becoming useful for people like me as well. So as a filmmaker, especially as an author, when I used to be a freelance author, I spent a lot of time selling my film concepts. So the way it went is I thought up a story, I wrote a script, and unfortunately film studio executives are not known for reading, surprisingly. I get it though. They have a lot to read. They have more to read on their table every day than they possibly could. So the way to stick out as a writer with a new concept is actually to use image material, to show them what is to be expected from your story when it finally gets turned into a film, ideally. And so I wasted about half of my time not working on my story, but making it look nice. That meant a lot of Googling, a lot of buying stock photos and photoshopping. Robert is here. We did a lot of that back then. And when AI came, we realized, finally, we can just give it parts of our story, prompt it, and in many cases, we finally had something that looked like the scene we were imagining, and finally we could focus more on our story and pitch more effectively. But that was just 2D images. So what do I need as a filmmaker when my production is actually getting made? Obviously, motion pictures. No worries, just a couple months later, we had something like these tools. So this is Luma AI, a very good online product that you can input images into and a prompt, but the prompt is often not even necessary. It will create a few seconds of movement like this. And this is where we're roughly standing with video creation currently, if you're still on the level of just using text prompts. But it only took about 2 years to get to this point, to a realistic moving horse. Does anyone know how long it takes to produce even a simple high-budget ad campaign these days? couple months. A couple months is the difference between getting awful images and realistic images. How about a movie, which is my business? This is the average time of production from a script to a finished movie, including the financing, the pre-production, figuring out who's even involved in a production, let alone the actual filming, editing, and visual effects. So I recommend, especially if you're a creative business, to keep watching AI development, because if I'm thinking of a script right now, the way that movie is going to be made is completely 100% different from the way it would have been made right now if we started filming today. So by the time I finish this talk, it's probably already outdated, what I'm telling you today. And just to give you a current state of that first part, the high-budget ad campaign, I'd like to show you a little example that I picked up from one of my LinkedIn connections, which is a speculative ad that he created for eBay, using the tools that were available just a couple months ago.
Down the river too far. What about us? What about all the times you said you had the answer? What about us? What about all the broken happy ever after? What about us? What about all the plans that ended in disaster? What about love? What about love? What about us?
So if you stumble upon this in your TikTok feed or maybe before a YouTube video, you might think, okay, it's a nice ad for eBay, has some nice animations. If any of you work in the creative business, may I ask, could you raise your hands who makes media, advertising? Okay, you probably know how difficult and expensive it would be to create this. A lot of it would just be computer graphics. You would have to hire someone to do cloth simulations just to animate those t-shirts and sweaters to move by themselves, or even the pants that look like someone is wearing them. There's a lot of ways to approach it. All of them are expensive. This took a good amount of work. Lucas Stanley, who made this, said it took 500 generations, so kind of hoping that the AI gives him what he's looking for, and a total of about 25 hours of work. One person, though. It's about 3 days of work. So this is much less than doing it the classic way. It's still not easy, but I think the results speak for themselves. They're pretty good, and I think eBay could be creating a real ad like this in the near future. Important point, though, if you take one thing from tonight, it is actually this slide. Because what I just showed you was created on the tip of the iceberg of generative AI. And this is what I call the surface of simple prompting. It includes tools you might know, like Midjourney or Runway if you're in the video sector. And I would even dare to include something like ChatGPT, which is, in my opinion, a consumer product. And you saw how much you can get with that. But what is down here? This is what we call the depths of controlled creation. Because if you're creative, especially if you're working in a team of more than one person, you're going to hit the limits of the tip very quickly, because you suddenly have a director who has a very clear view of what they want to create. You have maybe a creative director above that, working at the client company, who wants you to stick to the corporate identity. A bunch of specific colors, specific shapes. Maybe they have previous videos that they want to imitate the look of. You can't possibly achieve that with simple prompting, because you're stuck with text. And text, as I said earlier, is very hard to turn into a movie or to imagine even without some actual manual work. So I'm going to get into those lower levels of controlled creation today to introduce you to a much bigger world of AI creation. But first, why do you even need this control? Who are these creatives working with these tools? So I'd like to introduce you to the company I work at, STORYBOOK Studios first. What is our actual background? Unlike what you might be thinking, we are not a tech company. We don't develop any software that we're trying to sell, that I'm trying to sell to you tonight. Quite the opposite. Our background is from traditional entertainment. So I'm very proud to be working for this company, because If we time travel to the days before AI, our founder, Don Mack, a film producer, was actually able to produce a #1 hit movie in cinemas in Germany almost every single year, including Army of Thieves, for example, where he not only reached success in Germany, but worldwide with the #1 movie in 90+ countries, with his co-founder, Matthias Schweighöfer, who you see in almost every one of these posters. At this new company, Storybook, we kind of follow that legacy. We hope to, at least, because everyone on our team is also from the entertainment business. Not a single person hired at our company is purely an AI person, and I think that's kind of the key to what we're trying to do. Because where are we going? For the past year and a half, we've been implementing AI to create originals and trailers, like those you may have seen if you've seen some of those kind of very impressive science fiction fantasy trailers online. So what sets us apart? Because we come from entertainment, our goal is entertainment. We want to tell great stories that just happen to be made with AI. There are lots of platforms opening right now that say, oh, we want to stream exclusively AI-generated content. I think, honestly, every single one of those companies is going to fail, because you would never subscribe to a streaming service that advertises creation with a specific tool. It's all about the stories that the audience wants to see. So that's a lot of talk, a lot of big talk. I hope to show you the beginnings of this goal of creating great stories by presenting you our latest short film called The Barrier. And while you're watching this, I want you to keep in mind that 99% of all the visuals you see are completely AI generated, and one of the voices is too. Let's see if you can tell. And so, enjoy. This is about 5 minutes long.
Initiating wake-up sequence. Welcome back, pilot. Please make your way to the recovery room. And thank you for your service.
Hello? Anyone there?
Ah, there you are. You have no idea how glad I am that you are awake. I know it is a lot to take in, but you are humanity's last hope.
What's happening? Where is everyone?
A few years after the Air Force sent you to cryo, an alien race attacked Earth. They built a barrier to imprison humanity. You and me, we are the only humans awake.
I don't understand.
I am a scientist in a small research station a few million miles away. The barrier blocks my return. I found a way to free humanity, but I need your help.
This is not what I was trained for.
I tried, but there's no other way. I infiltrated a B-47. It's ready for you now. All you have to do is launch the warhead at the right moment to destroy the barrier.
That's suicide.
I found something that might help you.
Hi, honey. We are about to enter our cryopods. And they told me to record your message. So, no idea when you're getting this, but I just want you to remember that we love you. Tell Daddy you love him.
Love you, Daddy.
Are they alive? Can I see them?
They spent the last 200 years deep underground, waiting for a new world. Waiting for you.
So I can save them.
You have a chance. only a few hundred more, Master.
Thank you very much. I have to say, honestly, to harken back to that earlier point I made, we weren't even fast enough producing this movie because tools showed up that we were able to replace like 10% of the shots with on the last day. So the entire Scientist was made in a couple hours before release because the mouth movements, the facial expressions that had been created with AI before were completely overtaken by the time we were ready. So her voice was spoken by my colleague who is mid-20s, and AI converted to sound like an older woman. The entire performance, so the facial expressions and everything, were 100% AI generated. We did not even prompt it. We just gave it the voice, and it was able to interpret how the person should move, eyebrows and everything. There was only vocal recordings involved. So after releasing this movie, we got a lot of requests for our software. The one-click solution. I will take questions later if that's okay. Maybe I'll answer them in the process of the presentation, or later you can just try to remember. So we got requests for this, what I call the big red button that makes movies. Blockbuster right there. But I had to disappoint every single one of those requests because this button, unfortunately, does not exist at all. What does exist is this. This is a different way of portraying that iceberg that I showed you. And I would like to make you aware, if you're not, of the open source community, because most of the tools that we use to generate the actual imagery, the 2D images that we then animated, were created not with Midjourney, not with Runway or anything similar, but with Stable Diffusion. So if you've not heard of Stable Diffusion, this tool was actually created in Munich here, and is based on a technology by Dr. Björn Omma and his team from the LMU called latent diffusion. So this was a company that took the research and made it into a product that they released completely for free. You do need some background to use it, though. This added control has a price. So I would like to give you kind of a quick rundown what this diffusion even is. So AI image generation works quite simply, actually. Basically, you give a computer a random noise pattern and a text prompt to go with it, which is the image that it's supposed to find in this noise pattern. And very, very simply explained, I'm not one of the scientists who developed this, it's basically the reversal of an image recognition technology. So those AIs that were able to describe what is seen in a photo, it's basically inverted, and they're supposed to find the image in the random noise. And in order for these AI models to work, they need to look at millions and millions of images. And unlike the popular opinion, they do not actually save those images in the data set. Instead, they look at them to learn abstract concepts. So with every one of these images are keywords, so-called image text pairs that describe these images. And if you show it a picture of a sky, for example, it will be able to slowly but surely understand what a sky is supposed to be. Different styles are in there, different animals are in there. Anything up to actions, it understands the concept of flying, for example, if you showed enough examples of different creatures flying. So it can extrapolate like what the actual concept of flying is independently of the creature or person that might be doing it. The end result is that you can give this latent space, so-called latent space, which is this abstract cloud of concepts, a prompt like a photo of a flying bear, and it will basically travel through these different concepts and pick them up and combine them in new ways to create an original photo of a flying bear. Now, the general latent space that can create images decently is called a base model. So this is what the company Stability AI published into the open source community under the name Stable Diffusion. Unfortunately, it's just okay. It's very bad at specifics. So if I ask it to create something for a historical production, for example, a Roman legionary wearing a specific type of armor, it's not even a human anymore, it's just kind of armor. You can tell it understands the vague concept of a Roman, but this is not very useful. This is where so-called fine-tunes come in. And these can be created by you on your own software, which makes it very, very powerful. So let's say you want one to create photorealistic images in a movie style. You make a fine-tune by showing it more pictures of, for example, movies you've licensed or you have in your library, for example. We have a lot of films, so we're able to show it additional pictures in that realistic filmic style. And now suddenly, it's much more able to create realistic humans. It still doesn't understand the armor now, does it? This looks kind of like maybe this Egyptian snake head or something. It's very much not a Roman legionary wearing this armor. And this is where a further concept comes in called a low-ranking adaptation. These you can add on, and they're much lighter and easier to train. So for example, we can teach it what this Roman armor looks like. And it works with any sort of model or fine-tune. And now suddenly we get the armor, because it's seen several dozen photos of this specific Roman legionary style. And you can add another LoRa, and another one. For example, if you want it to look like a painting, absolutely no problem, you add an oil painting LoRa. So now you're starting to hopefully see the advantages of this level of control. Midjourney is doing a lot of this behind the scenes, but it's just guesswork. If you plug these together manually, you can finally maybe satisfy a director who's working with you on a project. It comes at a price, again, complexity. So this is Forge, this is useful for creating individual images. And if you really want to get into it, which I'm not going to, you can use something like Comfy UI. So that's where the prompt goes, a grinning elderly astronaut raising his hand. But in Comfy UI, you can add a ton more. So for example, different looks that you've defined. You can also just use your own webcam, use your own model, put it in there. There's me taking a picture of myself. Let me just wave. And this image I can use for added control if I want a specific pose, for example. So I have a bunch of different options. There it generates the post. It recognizes how I'm moving. Should have made this video a little faster. And there we have our astronaut with added control. So imagine trying to prompt your way to this specific guy in the hopes that maybe the arm's like this, maybe it's like this, maybe it's down here. So there's a ton more added control. I'm just going to skip through these options. You can give it outlines, you can give it a different image and generate a different content into it. This is something we used in a trailer. You can give it a photo of a hotel room, have it recognize the depth in that photo automatically, and completely change the style of your room. You can use it for text. People say AI can't be used for text. Well, it's not for text, but it is for making text pretty if you give it an image of that text beforehand. Great for video games, which is why the video game industry is far ahead of the film industry. They're not afraid of technology. Or you can turn yourself into another astronaut. This is actually my favorite feature. If you're as terrible at drawing as I am, you can just kind of give it this rough sketch. Let's say I'm working on a science fiction project and I need these twin skyscrapers on the surface of Mars, but they need to look specifically like this with a river going through it. Absolutely no problem. It'll do that for you. If your director decides to go completely insane and say, actually, no, we want those towers, but it's about candy now, no problem. Couple seconds of work. And of course, this also works for video. So all of these control nets these so-called control nets can work on input video as well. And now I want to show you an example of what happens when you use all of these tools in tandem by introducing to you the space vets. These are veterinarians who travel the galaxy looking for animals and aliens to help. And we applied AI in every single step of production and combined it with traditional animation techniques. And this is the trailer of the result.
You've reached the Space Vets. We rescue pets and more.
Hey, supersonic, we are the space vets. On call day and night.
Oh dear, the sun's hotter than 1,000 chilies.
Mom, Lennox is gone.
Oh no.
We'll be there as fast as we can.
Yes, almost got him.
Oh, Lennox.
The ship's out of control. All good back there?
Yep, all good.
Space Vets, let's go.
So the trick, if you can call it that here, is using AI for what it's good for, making textures, creating the 3D models that we used here within 5 seconds, which is completely crazy. If anyone's ever created a 3D model here, it takes hours, days, weeks, months, however long you want. And not letting AI do the difficult stuff. For example, for the animations, we used library footage, we filmed ourselves moving, and then used some lightly AI-based motion capture technology that's coming out, and putting that all together in a traditional render engine, Blender in this case. So we were able to save about 20% and produce it 4 times faster than traditionally. So we got a consultant on board who works in the traditional animation industry, and he guessed that we took about 9 months for this. We took around 60 days in a much smaller team than would otherwise be the case. So thankfully, we were able to make a decent splash with this release, and episode 2 is on the way. And they're all about 8 minutes long. Now I would like to skip forward a little bit and actually get back to this iceberg of Gen AI. So I told you earlier that this is the most important thing you can take with you. So I hope I was able to kind of open your eyes a little bit to the possibilities of what happens when you let creatives and tech people get together and figure out how to use this stuff, and not just kind of wait for tools to come out on the web that you can enter a prompt in and then just kind of prompt gamble until a result comes out. So this has been our past 1.5 years. We started with some initial testing, then we slowly started supporting some live action projects, developed an animation workflow, and were then able to create our Space Vets and the Barrier. But of course, it's not all strawberry cake and daisies. There are some massive challenges to the AI. Most importantly, responsibility, which a lot of people are slacking on. And as a creative especially, I have spoken to a lot of other creatives who are not quite so positive about AI, and I think their concerns are quite legitimate. Primarily regarding the code of conduct and ethics. We don't have control over the data that goes into these models right now. They're still very, very expensive to train a base model that we can then, improve slightly with our methods. These are big companies, they are scraping the web, and a lot of work that artists may not want to have their AIs trained on are ending up in the work. What we do have control of is how we prompt. So on day 1 in our company, we decided on a couple of rules. In the prompts, we avoid intellectual property completely. We do not use any trademarks, any character names that are protected, and of course, not any names of real humans. We don't prompt any actors. We don't even combine actors. I've seen that trick online. If you want to get an original looking character that looks the same between shots, you can just mix Tom Cruise and Robert Downey Jr. No, that's not cool. Please don't do that. We also avoid styles associated with any artists or brands without their consent, so I strongly recommend you also do that. I see a lot of prompting like, hey, I made a movie in the style of Wes Anderson. I don't think that's ethical. We avoid real people, I've already said that, and most importantly, I think create in good faith. If you get a result that you prompted cleanly that looks a lot like an existing brand or story, for example, on Midjourney, if you prompt cowboy, you almost always get Arthur Morgan from the Red Dead Redemption game. If you recognize that, if you know, you got to change your prompt. Another big challenge is bias. So bias must be taken into account because AIs don't know good from bad, and they were trained on the complete average of everything we've put into the internet as humans, which includes every single prejudice. So most obviously, people who are conventionally attractive are much more likely to be photographed. So most images out there of real humans, they look fantastic, and they're always wearing makeup. If they're female usually, they're perfectly photographed. And you might have to prompt against that. So for example, close-up portrait of a woman, even if, you see the prompt on the top, even if you prompt no makeup, it is so overtrained on people with makeup that she's obviously still wearing makeup. So you really gotta make sure to not use that. Or here, for example, if you prompt selfie of a woman in a bar, she's extremely sexualized. This is not an average woman in a bar. This is a very specific type of person. She's white. And then if you try to be a little more careful and put nude in the negative prompt, she's wearing a little bit more clothing and immediately has a Christian cross, of course. The AI doesn't think, so we have to for it. And then, this is another option, just to be fair, to cherry pick the result. Still, they're all white. Nowhere do we say Caucasian person. And here, if you prompt a person crying, for example, again, it's a woman crying, and it's almost always going to be a woman crying. If you prompt an angry person, almost always going to be a man. So I implore you, let boys cry too. There's also bias in language models. I know I'm talking a lot about images as well, but maybe screenwriters are using ChatGPT, for example. It's also extremely prevalent in ChatGPT. For example, if you prompt "my girlfriend slapped me," it's going to say, "I'm sorry to hear that. It sounds like things got pretty intense." If you're comfortable sharing, what led up to that moment? Do you want to tell me maybe something you did? It's kind of implicit in there, I would say. It might help to talk through what happened. So it wants us to engage in a dialogue with ChatGPT. That's a nice offer. But what if I prompt "my boyfriend slapped me"? Suddenly, it's all about violence. No one deserves to be treated with violence. No one? Really? You just kind of forgot about me being treated with violence when I was a man. And it's immediately recommending I reach out to someone I trust or seek professional support. Because, again, this is the complete average of what we've taught these AIs as a society. Now, a question I was asked to talk about today is, how do I actually detect generated content? Because I create a lot of content, so maybe by spending a lot of time with it, I'm able to share with you some prompts about how to figure out if something was AI generated. Well, you might say immediately, just look at it, the hands, the face. All of us have seen the messed up AI images with 6 fingers and melting faces, right? Sorry, that's from last year. No problem. This is Midjourney, one single text prompt, no editing. I think, I would argue, if you saw this pop up on your LinkedIn or as an ad, you wouldn't even think twice if this was AI generated. You can make something in seconds. But you might say now, okay, but this is a professional portrait, right? It has good lighting. This was trained on some professional photographer's work. This is also completely AI generated. Her hands, she could have some hair on her hand maybe, but this, you wouldn't really question if this was AI if you saw it on Instagram, for example. It could be a friend of yours. Absolutely no problem to make this look like a friend of yours either, by the way. Very simple tricks to give her a real face. This too, 100% AI, simple text prompt, made by a Reddit user. And here's something I made for this talk. Text, no problem anymore either. If you were thinking, hey, you're going to look for messed up text in the background somewhere, the text was perfect in every single attempt I did. So I was able to pick from like 5 different options. So, is this what we have to do? Do we have to question every single image we see from now on? Is that the solution? Please, no. That would lead to complete insanity. Imagine, you're scrolling through Instagram. No. Why? Because real photos can also easily look strange. That's not a really effective approach. This is a real photo of a real javelin thrower. And in case you're wondering what's going on here, that's just a shadow from the javelin going onto his face because the light's coming from over there. Or this. Where's the rest of the cat? No problem. It's standing on the cabinet behind the door and sticking its head through. Or this. This would have come out of an AI two years ago, but out of a camera decades ago, no problem. Okay, so I think humans are pretty bad at detecting AI just from looking at it. Let's use an AI to detect AI, right? Sorry. If there's an AI that can detect a text or an image that was made by a human, unfortunately, as we learned early on when I explained how diffusion works, you can just kind of flip that around and then you'll immediately have an AI that can generate text that seems 100% human, because that's how these systems work. In addition, pretty much all of our daily snapshots nowadays are already AI. Selfies, family photos, even casual photos of your pets. Look more carefully next time. Is your dog still your dog? No, I'm half joking, but the hardware in our phones has barely improved in the past couple of years. It's mostly software. And there's almost no photo you can take with your iPhone unless you're using a specialized app that doesn't have some form of machine learning support. It smooths your skin, makes you look a little better, improves the lighting. So purely electronically, there's no real easy way to detect whether a photo is completely AI or just slightly AI. So maybe, as a final last resort, we have to use the law and force every person who creates anything with a slight part of AI to mark their content digitally and add a credential. I'm not going to cross this one through, because I do agree on some level. You may have seen this logo on LinkedIn before. If you look through your feed, it might be in the corner of an image, and supposedly this is a so-called content credential that saves the exact date and tools that were used to edit a photo or create a photo. So why is it here on this LinkedIn post of my colleague from work, who definitely exists, and posed like this, and this photo was taken by a real photographer? Well, because even if you take a picture with a traditional DSLR, so not an iPhone or anything, or even analog, as soon as you bring it into Photoshop and you put a slight edit onto it, maybe the photographer saw a little speck of dust in a corner somewhere and removed it with a generative fill feature, it's suddenly going to be marked as an AI photo. And it's going to be really hard to remove that content credential. So I think we're going to be seeing a lot of this CR logo, and it won't mean very much at all. What do we do? I want to keep creating with AI, so I don't think we should be stopping it right now and maybe passing out licenses to just creative people who are allowed to use it for fiction. I don't want to be a doomer. And of course, some things can be done. So I am going to share with you a couple basics to recognize AI at the current state of technology. Don't remember these for too long, but they might help you for now. So first, I'm going to watch another video with you, and this is one that hundreds of thousands of people on Facebook are sharing right now, thinking that it's completely real. Yay! The giraffe was rescued. Where is this giraffe exactly? So how do we know this is real? I brought some tricks. Trick number one is basic logic. Giraffes do not live in the jungle at all. There was some horrible zoo airplane travel accident, I don't know. Trick number two, a little more sophisticated, very easy, compare multiple shots. Right now, it's extremely difficult for filmmakers without significant effort, like we did with the space vets or the barrier, to create even similar angles with AI. So this is even from the same perspective, and you can see the rock. There's much more rock. Suddenly there are people down there. So why do the people not need help from the crane? I don't know. And the background is completely different. And the crane is a different color, by the way, too. Trick number three, artifacts in the background. So I told you earlier that faces and bodies are no longer a problem. Well, they aren't in portraits. They are very much a problem in the background. So as soon as you see a crowd of people, you're in luck. That's the easiest way to tell if something is AI generated. Too many hands, people melting into each other, and once they're in motion, it's usually very clear. Also super important, because unfortunately these tricks won't last for long. Remember that detecting AI is about the same level of importance and that requires the same technique as detecting disinformation of all sorts. That's all going to meld into one form. And honestly, does it really matter if something is created with AI or with CGI or literally just someone filming themselves spewing nonsense into a camera? I don't think it matters that much. So if you see something that you're not sure about, or even if you see something that you're very sure about is real, ask yourself 2 questions before sharing it. Does this evoke a strong emotional response? And are there multiple independent and competent sources for this? One current example that we saw just a couple weeks ago, someone claimed with a video that in 2011, Kamala Harris hit a 13-year-old girl with her car in San Francisco and left her paralyzed. And the supposed victim was in the video. Does this evoke a strong emotional response? I would say yes, very much. This poor girl, especially if you see her in a video. Are there multiple independent and competent sources on this? Supposedly, this video was created by KBSF TV, so a local San Francisco news station that uncovered this thing. KBSF does not exist at all. They didn't even bother taking CNN or something because oftentimes they invent a source that might be difficult to find or confirm. If this had happened in 2011, Kamala Harris was Attorney General of California. Every single news station would have absolutely adored this news on both sides and shared it because they don't belong to the state and would have made a ton of money. So question 2, it very much does not pass that. And I think going forward, that is a much more important question to ask than was this made with AI or not? Because I think AI is turning into the same sort of thing as Photoshop. You can just see the comments in real time. What used to be, hey, this looks Photoshopped, is now, hey, this looks AI generated. Doesn't mean anything at all. And with that, I would like to open the floor to some questions. Of course, I'm available for the rest of today. And if you are interested, and I heard that maybe some of you are from TUM and HFF, the film school, I also have some upcoming talks and deep dive workshops if you want to learn how to use these tools yourself. So thank you very much for your attention. Thank you for the invitation here today. And looking forward to your questions. Thank you very much. Thank you very much.
Very great presentation. I loved it, and funny enough, I just saw your trailer about the barrier yesterday.
Cool.
So it was really cool to see it here and to see the company behind it. So my question would be, what kind of tools were you using to create a trailer? Because runway and all these things are there, but I'm sure you did something special with it.
Yeah, I mean, so on the other side of that whole thing is the Space Vets Kids project that I showed you, where we tried on purpose to use as many open source local tools as possible. So that was created on our AI farm in our studio here. The barrier was quite the opposite. We wanted to see how far we could get using any tools at our disposal. So what we did originally is we created a so-called animatic. So in animation projects, you would create still images at first and kind of edit the whole movie using the non-moving images. That was all open source. We're still very happy with Flux from Black Forest Labs and Stable Diffusion. The animation, I have to say the open source scene is not as great as some of the new players, like for example, Minimax by Hailuo. There's a lot of Chinese companies that are incredible. Luma AI. Runway might be in there for a couple shots, but I'm not a huge fan of their product, unfortunately, right now. And the lip sync, I think, was most impressive from Hedra. So surprisingly, Hedra only takes 2 still images, so you don't get the whole motion of the character, but the movement of the head, kind of the nodding, the eyebrows is very impressive from that product. So I think that's the most important part of that video.